Hello, everybody. Welcome in. It's been a minute. Haven't seen you in quite some time. I appreciate you guys tuning in. Pleasure to have you in here. My name is Connor Griffin. For those of you who know me, you know I'm just a diehard Penn State fan, and I use this channel exclusively, not for views. I'm not trying to really build an audience here necessarily, but I just want to air out my thoughts on Penn State football and just get things off my chest. Thankfully, there are people who tune in. If you're tuning in right now, thank you very much. And I have not made a video since Franklin was fired. Technically, it was the day before Franklin was fired. I got on here after the Northwestern loss. We lost 22-21, and for the first time ever, I said that James Franklin needs to be fired. There needs to be a change. I had always been a Franklin supporter. I had defended him and fought for him tooth and nail against everybody who was criticizing him and saying, he's not the guy. I was like, he is the guy, and then that was the game, the Northwestern loss, where I realized, yeah, he's not. You kind of already got the sense after the UCLA game, but then Northwestern was the final nail in the coffin, and I came out and said he needed to be fired. Sure enough, next day he was fired, and then we went through about 2 months of a roller coaster where there are ups and downs on and off the field. It looked pretty dark and gloomy there for a second, but now I think we're in just an amazing spot, and I can't wait to talk about 2026 and beyond. I can't wait to talk about the Matt Campbell era, but you do, I think, have to first reflect on this past year. I always come on here at the end of the season and give just an end-of-year type of video looking back on everything that transpired, but I understand that a lot of people probably don't want to revisit, particularly the first half of this year, so we'll make it fairly quick, and then we will get into 2026, Matt Campbell, all of that stuff. I do want to say beforehand, I just saw on my phone that Anthony Dunco announced that he's returning for next year, so that's great. Good news. I love to see that. But to that point, there's a lot of stuff that's changing by the minute here with, coaching hires and players announcing they're staying or leaving. And what I say in this video, I'm recording this, not Wednesday, Tuesday, December 30th. The transfer portal is opening up in a couple of days. There's a lot of stuff that's going to be changing. And so I might say something in this video that by the time you're watching it, tomorrow or the next day, maybe it doesn't apply because the info that I currently have now is not the same info we have a day from now, 2 days from now. So I just want to put that out there. I apologize if I say something and you're watching, you're like, wait a second, that already happened, or that's not what actually wound up occurring, that type of stuff. Anyway, that's my little precursor. We will now get into 2025 and just looking back at the year we had. I do want to start at the very end. I want to start with the bowl game. I'm not going to get all the way into X's and O's because we're 3 days past it now, but I can't get over how impressed I was by just how poised this team was on Saturday and how they came out. It was a cohesive, coherent game plan that this team, which was mainly a lot of young guys, they just executed perfectly. You look at the stats and you look at the final numbers. We only had 3 penalties in that game. And I should probably go back and check. I know for sure one was an illegal shift. I think it was Rappleyea. And then I think we for sure had one pass interference call against us. And then I want to say we had another one as well. But point stands, I just moved my camera around. I apologize. Point stands, it was not dumb pre-snap penalties. Wasn't false starts. Wasn't like the offense was so discombobulated and they were struggling to get a pulse of the offense. It was not like defensively it was undisciplined penalties that were just so avoidable. No, they were a very sound, very well-run football team and well-coached football team, despite the fact that, again, it was primarily all young guys. We had all these opt-outs, all these seniors, who were going to the draft, a lot of people who were, transferring out and they just didn't want to play. It was mainly these underclassmen who had received very few minutes, very little significant playing time this season. They're thrust into this starting role, and they made the most of their opportunity. You look at the offense in particular. First of all, I know Grunk, that was his 7th start, but still it's only 7 starts. He's a backup quarterback, and he's playing with a 4th-string running back in Quentin Martin. And then you have 4 of the 5 starting offensive linemen opting out. So it's a makeshift offensive line that had not played together in a game this year, and they're able to go out and get almost 400 yards. Crazy. They had 397 in those conditions, the slop, the snow, the icy field, the football being as hard as a rock. They almost get 400 yards. Again, in a game where it was their first game all playing together. It was crazy. You look at Clemson's offense, led by Cade Klubnik, who's a 5-star quarterback. Is he a 3-year starter or a 4-year starter? I can't remember. I should have looked that up beforehand. But he knows how to operate that offense, and we outgained them by over 150 yards. On the opposing sideline, there's Dabo Swinney, a 2-time national championship winning head coach, and Terry Smith kind of outcoaches him. It was stunning. I was so impressed and so pleased because you had a lot of people saying, what's the point of this bowl game? What does it matter? It's a bunch of teams, with players opting out. It's a glorified scrimmage. The team I saw from Penn State, I was very proud of. I was really proud of. And these guys, just maximize their opportunity. I look at the defense. Jameer Joseph, oh my God, he had a hell of a game. Darius Dixon as well. A lot of the secondary, it was a bunch of young guys who really didn't receive a whole lot of playing time this year, and they made the most of that playing time. Offensively, talk about young guys. Quentin Martin has 100 yards on the ground. Crazy. And credit to Terry Smith and credit to that coaching staff for recognizing, he's got the hot hand. We're going to ride him the rest of the game. And he played a great game. Tyke Hayes got in there, and he was throwing in blocks that were amazing. He had the one where Grunk was just about to get absolutely crumpled. But Tyke Hayes comes out of nowhere, seals the guy off, and Grunk has a clean pocket to make the throw. Like, they just came in, and they were so fundamentally sound. And, again, didn't commit many penalties at all. There were no turnovers in the game. I was thinking for sure, like, one of these running backs is going to have to fumble, right? No, they didn't. Took care of the football, played a clean game. They played their asses off. They were physical, and I thought in the second half they dominated Clemson. It was a resounding win. And the fact that we go up 15-3 after that Trevor Pena touchdown, which I love. And Trevor Pena having a great game on Saturday. It was so refreshing because I felt so bad for him this year. We didn't use any of these receivers properly, but he in particular had a lot of talent. And I don't think that he really got to shine anywhere near as much as he should have. Well, he shined on Saturday. He has that 73-yard touchdown. We go up 15-3. Then we kind of let Clemson, for the first time all game, go down the field easy on us. It's now 15-10. We got to ice this game in the fourth quarter. And Grunky, he gets back there, and he leads us down the field, throws that easy touchdown to Rapp, which was a great play designed by Kodernicki. You have to give him credit. And the tempo that went into that and everything. I mean, no problem. We go up 22-10. We ice the game. And then to make matters even better, the defense comes back on the field, and Clemson's trying, last-ditch effort to keep this a game. It's fourth down, and we just send the house at Cade Klubnik and take him down for a sack. What do we have, 4 or 5 sacks on the day? Just the fact that this team, both offensively and defensively, was able to end the game on their own terms. And I mean, it was a resounding win. They totally outclassed Clemson. And I know Clemson has also had a chaotic year of their own, but that was a major win. Oh, my God, that was a major win. And I spoke about sacks briefly there. Denai Dennis Sutton gets 2 of them. The fact that he played in this game, outstanding. Huge, huge respect for Denai Dennis Sutton. Played all 60 minutes. I thought maybe he'd play a quarter, maybe he'd play a half. No, played the full game and balled out in his final game in the blue and white. That was great to see, and it definitely sets a great example that this coaching staff can use in the future. Like, hey, look at what happened to Denai Dennis Sutton when we were 6-5. We were 6-6. We were 6-6 playing in the Pinstripe Bowl, a totally irrelevant game. He decides to play. I imagine that'll help him in the draft, and I imagine it'll help him in the interview process as well. Like, it was just so great to see. And then my last thing is, Grunkemeyer just had a phenomenal game. Once again, finishing at 69% completion. That was right around where he was for the entire year, 69, 70%. He's just really, really grown and shown some great stuff. And we'll get into that later on, where I think the quarterback room stands moving forward with Matt Campbell coming in. But can't say enough about Ethan Grunkemeyer and what he was able to do and how much he was able to help this team in the turnaround in the back half of this season. I was a guy a month ago who said, I don't really know if we should be playing in a bowl game. I don't know if I want to. This is back when we were losing just week after week. It was extremely chaotic. You had no idea who the next head coach was going to be. And I was like, I just think this is going to be a hindrance to really getting things off the ground for 2026. We're going to be worried about bringing this new head coach in, and there are going to be all these people who are, looking, do I transfer? Do I stay? And blah, 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 blah. And we're having to build a roster for next year and get things moving in the right direction for next year. But we have this irrelevant bowl game that, if we're lucky enough to make a bowl, we'll be 6-6 or 7-5. I don't want to play in that game if it could be holding us back from really focusing on what matters for next year. But, yeah, I was wrong. The way that this team came to form in the back half of this year under Terry, and the way that so many of these guys got the experience that they hadn't gotten all season, the fact that Terry Smith can go out on a bowl win, and, yeah, the young guys get to flash, and everybody coming together for one final go-around and ending this season on a high note when there were so many low points. And now you hand the program off with such momentum to Matt Campbell. Yeah, you just can't say enough about Terry Smith, and we'll get to him in a little bit more. I do want to go back, though, before we talk about Terry Smith, we do have to talk about the 6 games with Franklin. Again, won't talk about this a whole lot because I'm pretty sure everybody's already on the same page, and I think a lot of people want to move past this. They don't want to really keep harping on Franklin, but I will just for a little bit. People in the national media, and I experienced it a lot at my job, they kept saying, yeah, Penn State, they were never right after the Oregon loss. The Oregon loss is what did them in. We were never looking right before the Oregon loss. We played starters the entire 4 quarters against FIU. We had to get style points in the 4th quarter against Villanova. This team did not look right to the point where we were all kind of questioning, yeah, are we holding stuff back offensively? Are we being bland on purpose because we know that we're about to play Oregon and we don't want to show the full playbook? And then you get to the Oregon game and you realize, oh, no, that's not the case. We're just bad. Like, this is just what the offense is. You would think when we go out and get 3 transfer portal receivers, I talked about Trevor Pena briefly, Kyron Hudson, Devontae Ross, there was a lot of excitement. We were upgrading the receiver room, which has been the sore spot of the team for the past 2 seasons. We go out and we get 3 transfer portal receivers. We're returning 2 electric running backs in Katron Allen and Nick Singleton. You get a 3rd-year starter in Drew Aller, who was a 5-star. This is going to be the year where this offense really takes off. Yet we were playing in this 5-yard box offensively in the pass game, where every throw is a dink and dunk completion or it's side to side. When you have an absolute rifle of an arm back there in Drew Aller, a pure pocket passer who can rip it, let him unleash it. And we never did. Everything, as Terry Smith pointed out, when he finally took over as head coach and was starting to get the offense back on track, everything is side to side. We're not going vertical. And maybe that was a Drew problem. Maybe that was Drew's mentality, where he was too timid or too conservative, and maybe the deep shots were being called. He just didn't feel comfortable taking them. But I do know that for years under Franklin, we have heard him praise Drew Aller for, touchdown to interception ratio. He's got one of the best in college football, and he doesn't have many turnover-worthy plays. So James Franklin was definitely also very much prioritizing a conservative, safe approach, and that's what we were rolling out as an offense. And you thought, okay, well, Andy Kotelnicki, last year it was very gimmicky. It was a lot of razzmatazz because we needed to offset and mask the deficiencies in the receiver room. And for the most part, it worked. In the big games, it really didn't. It got shut down. But you saw improvement there, and because of his creative mind, we were able to move the chains, get yardage, score points, all that. Now, you didn't see much of a need for that gimmicky razzmatazz because we had receivers, and you thought that this offense, again, was really going to hit its stride, and it never did. And Drew Aller, I don't think, was ever put into a situation to succeed. The offense was at its best when he was running the football, despite the fact that, again, he is a pocket passer. That Oregon game, the entire drive we had to tie the game up at 17 in the 4th quarter, that was largely Drew Aller just putting the entire offense on his back and running the football and just willing us down the field with his legs. Sure enough, that's ultimately what does him in for the season. He finally gets hurt, which was our biggest concern with him running the football more. He gets hurt, and he's out the rest of the year. But, yeah, that was the only time that the offense ever had any juice, and we couldn't get a real running game going with the running backs because the passing game wasn't expanding the defense. Defenses didn't have to play us honest. They could creep up. They could stack the box, and you saw Katron Allen still be able to get his carries and still be able to get his yardage. His average yards per rush was still up there because he is a pure talent at running back where he's shifty. He has great vision at the line of scrimmage. He can make people miss. He can break tackles. Despite all the dysfunction offensively, he could still get his. That was not the case with Nick Singleton. And so you're seeing an offense that doesn't have a real passing game, is trying to do a two-back system, but one of those backs, when he comes into the game, the offense just stalls. And it was just totally dysfunctional. It was not going to work. And you see, when Franklin ultimately gets fired, we decide Katron is the primary back. We're not splitting carries anymore. He is going to be the premier guy. In the Oregon and UCLA games, he had 20 carries combined. Well, the rest of the season, he was getting about 20 to 25 carries a game. That was a massive change. You see, we're going to really start to run the football effectively, which will then set up the play action, which will then create more opportunities downfield. And the windows that Grunkemeyer had to throw, and to his credit, he was throwing these balls. The windows, if Drew Aller had those windows, I can't even imagine how good this offense would be and how much it would have flourished. But it did not. Also, once we get the run game going, it then opens the downfield passing game where we're keeping defenses more on their toes. We're opening things up offensively. Defensively, Jim Knowles, I never thought he was the problem through the first 4 games. I thought even in the Oregon game, that defense was really solid. Considering how much they were on the field, our offense was just consistently punting the ball away, and the defense was on the field for so much in that game. I was thinking, yeah, they played a pretty solid game against Oregon. And then Rojas goes down, and we get to UCLA the very next week, and you realize, okay, the anchor of the defense is gone, and this defense is way too complicated to just put in Dom DeLuca or put in anybody else to fill in. We're having to, pull things together, plug and pull guys in, and they can't grasp the system. And I was always a guy who would downplay and ignore it when people would say, hey, watch out. Yeah, great. Congrats on hiring Jim Knowles, but just wait for that wait for that defense to come to form because it's going to take 3 years. Everybody was saying that. Hey, it's a 3-year install. I'm like, that just doesn't make any sense. Because, yes, it took a full 3 years to fully get the results at Oklahoma State when he was defensive coordinator there. But that's because Oklahoma State was not a good defense before he got there. Ohio State, when he took over there, I think they were 38th in the country in total defense. And then by year 3, they were the number 1 team in the country when it came to total defense. So Penn State, despite all my criticisms about Tom Allen last year, they were still a top 10 defense last year in 2024. I was like, the foundation is already there. We just need somebody to tweak it. I did not think the 3-year install had any legs, any credibility. I was like, we're going to be fine. We upgraded from Tom Allen. The defense is going to be a juggernaut. It was not. it was not. And apparently, yeah, it was so complicated of a system that it really did take a prolonged period of time, which, again, it goes back to Franklin, and maybe Kraft was involved in this decision as well. But if you are going to bring in a defensive coordinator in a make-or-break year for the program, 2025, everything had been building to this. Again, I was a guy who defended Franklin forever, but I also said before the year, listen, if he doesn't get it done this year, and if we go 10-2 again, yeah, I'm going to think very differently of him. This is his year. Everything is lining up for 2025. In a make-or-break year for the program, you bring in a defensive coordinator that can't get his system installed right away, that's too complicated for the players to grasp. They're not going to get it until 2027. What? I thought that was crazy. I was like, there's no way. No way that would be the case where has that dense of a system that it's hard for these players to process in year 1. Yet, apparently, that's exactly what happened because as soon as Terry Smith gets involved, we start to dumb the defense down. He said that publicly. Yeah, we had to dumb down the defense. Lo and behold, we start getting more pressure. Denai Dennis Sutton went through 6 games in the middle of the year where he didn't even register a single sack. Then he gets going. It was that Indiana game. Indiana, Fernando Mendoza, aside from that last drive, he was under duress for a good chunk of that game. We were getting in the backfield and just getting after him. Denai Dennis Sutton was a leading charge in that. We finally got back to playing like aggressive and playing a style of football where these players just didn't have to think so much. They could just go out and play, and that was great to see. They had a little bit of a snafu against Rutgers where, yeah, we gave up, 30-some points, 40-some points to Rutgers. That was unexpected. But I do think at that point in the year, I think the players realized Terry Smith was not going to be the next head coach. They really didn't have as much to fight for. Some people were checked out. Maybe they were thinking, okay, well, we're going to transfer. But leading up to that game, I mean, you look at Nebraska. First of all, I'll say the team found something in the Ohio State game in the second half. They really found something against Indiana. And I was so pissed we couldn't win that game. That would have been awesome. But it was a great effort. Maybe their best game they played all year. And then Nebraska was where everything really came together. It was one of the most special nights that I can remember at Beaver Stadium. Everybody chanting, Terry, Terry. He gets his first win at Beaver. Katron Allen, he breaks the all-time rushing record. We just thump Nebraska. As dominant of a win that I've seen from Penn State in quite some time. Just the product of what we looked like. Again, everything just made sense. We were no longer playing in this 5-yard box offensively. We were rewarding Katron and making him the primary back while still getting Nick involved in ways that we weren't getting him involved in the first 6 games of the season. The defense was lights out, and yet we're beating Matt Rule in Nebraska 37-10. Oh, my God, it was awesome. It was so much fun, a game that I absolutely wish I was there for. You just see how much of a difference it was with Terry Smith than it was with James Franklin. It was crazy. And people can point to, man, it was unfair that they fired James Franklin at that stage in the season. Nick Saban was saying it. Comes out of the blue. Wow, they just fired Franklin in the middle of the year. The guy spent 12 years there, and they get rid of him right away. When you know somebody's not the guy, you can't keep him around. James Franklin said the same exact thing when he fired Mike Yurcich 2 years ago, 2023, after the Michigan game. He said, yeah, we kind of knew that we weren't going to be going with Mike Yurcich next year, and we just felt it prudent to get him out of here. It allows him to go find a job. It allows us to move in the right direction, and that's exactly what the case was with Franklin this year. Plus, you got to think about it. I think it was Audrey Snyder and John Sauber, I want to say it was them, who pointed this out on their podcast, where they said, think about it from this perspective. If you let James Franklin coach throughout the rest of this year and the team just continues to suck, where, we're still playing Liam Clifford, we're still playing Dom DeLuca, we're still playing all these guys who just, we're not a serious team if you continue to operate the way you're operating. And we go 4-8, or we go 5-7. The reason why we barely had to pay any of Franklin's buyout was because when we fired him, he was still really marketable. And we were giving him all the opportunities in the world to go pursue another head coaching job, to pursue another job in media. A bunch of schools would want to hire James Franklin while he's still, fairly, I guess, considered a winning head coach. But if you go 4-8 or 5-7 with this roster, are you considered that same winning head coach? I don't know. If you fire him at the end of the year, are there as many jobs available? Probably not. Probably a lot of schools that are already, they've fulfilled their head coaching position, their vacancy. So by firing him at that stage early in the year, you actually helped yourself out financially a ton, because he was going to get a really good job. And for his sake, he was able to save face and still have some market value. So it worked in that regard. And it also worked for the sake of retaining the players for next year. If you had gone through this entire year knowing, James Franklin probably not going to be the guy moving forward, we're going to fire him at the end of the season, that gives him time to still, legally talk to players in your locker room, and they probably stay loyal. More people stay loyal to Franklin, whereas now, having experienced the back half of the season with Terry and how different the vibe is and how much more fun these guys are having, this is the first time. I talked about the Nebraska win. I also talked about how well they looked in the Clemson win in the Pinstripe Bowl. Like, this is a confident football program. These guys under Franklin, considering the fact that they never really won a big game, they were never playing confident. They were never playing like they were having fun. We found out that the practice and the walkthrough schedule leading up to these games was absurd under Franklin. Terry Smith did away with so much of that and just focused on, hey, we're going to go out. We're not going to think. We're just going to play football, and we're going to have fun, and we're going to love the game, and the game will love us back. And that's what happened. So you saw just how different it was with Terry Smith, and I think a lot of these people realize, okay, I loved playing for James Franklin, and I still love James Franklin as a man, but I kind of like this direction that we're heading in at Penn State, and I want to keep playing here. I think you're going to see a lot less people transfer. I would not be shocked if there are people come January 2nd who leave Penn State to go play for James Franklin at Virginia Tech, but I think you're going to see a lot less people, especially considering the fact that Terry Smith is still going to be on staff, because they saw just how different things could be and how much fun they could be having, how much more confident they could be playing at a place like Penn State as opposed to playing under James Franklin. Because, yeah, just the methodology is just so different. The psychology, the philosophy, everything is different between Terry Smith and James Franklin. And I think what you're going to see moving forward is that this program is going to be a lot more like the way we were running and the way we were operating in the back half of this year. Terry Smith, the job that he did, and I've already said it on Twitter, I've already said it a bunch, the way he was able to completely turn this team around. It took a little bit of time. You know, I was at that Iowa game, and Kotelnicki was trying to run a 2-quarterback system. Eventually, Terry Smith breaks through and says, hey, cut the gimmick shit out. Cut it out. We're not doing that anymore. Eventually, he gets to Jim Knowles and he says, hey, we're dumbing this thing down. It's too complicated. And you really start to see it come to form, and we end the year on a 4-game winning streak. We somehow have a winning season. Don't take that for granted. Penn State, the last losing season we've had outside of COVID, which was not a full season, was 2004. Crazy that we were able to get a winning season out of this, and he really developed these guys. Grunkmeyer's development over the course of the past, 7 games has been crazy. So many of these guys defensively have developed insane amounts, and it's great to see. Rappleyea, oh my God, we weren't playing Rappleyea. We weren't playing Kobe Howard. We weren't playing these guys who should have been playing from the very beginning. They finally get some experience. They get some shine. It was so good to see in the back half of this year. And Terry Smith, could not have been a better bridge to Matt Campbell. He ended this season on such a high note, and you have such confidence in the way that we are heading as a program now, all because of Terry Smith. Can't thank him enough, and I am so glad that he's going to be back on staff. When it comes to people who we need to retain, as I said earlier, Anthony Dunco just announced that he's staying. That's massive. I could put this video out, and by the time you see it, an hour after I press send, one of these guys I'm about to say already says that they're staying or they're leaving, so this might be irrelevant. But there are 5 guys in particular who, if it's up to me, I want them as cornerstones of this team next year from this current roster. No particular order. Rappleyea, I already talked about. Seems like he's staying. He's put out some cryptic tweets. That's the main thing that I hate about all this. These players, they keep changing their profile pictures, and they're changing their headers, and they're putting out these pictures with emojis as captions, and you have to try and read between the lines and guess what they're trying to say here. I hate the cryptic nature of all of this. But Rappleyea seems like he's already staying. I'd also throw Darius Dixon in there. Darius Dixon is a stud and has shown some great promise this year in the defensive backfield. I would love to see him come back. Kobe Howard is another guy who, I don't know. This receiver room this year, I don't want to say he was necessarily the best receiver, but you saw him with the most upside. And he's a guy where, we were struggling to throw the football, and you just wish that he got more playing time. And when we do finally put him in, sure enough, things change for the better. I think this receiver room, it was just overall the philosophy of this offense that really held them back. I don't think that Ross was a bad receiver. I don't think Hudson was a bad receiver. I definitely don't think that Trevor Pena was a bad receiver. I just don't think they were put in the right situation to thrive. Kobe Howard was able to break through that a little bit and showed some real flash. I would love to see him next year on this roster. Tony Rojas is another guy, another cornerstone. He's my 4th guy who I would love to see on this roster again. I imagine he's also a package deal with Matt Campbell. The one concern I have with him is that he has been the most outspoken guy. He was pretty critical of the way the team was going about this coaching search, And I don't know exactly if, as a culture fit, he is the right guy. I don't know how he fits in that locker room. I don't know how the coaching staff views him as an individual. I just know as a player, he is a freak. And yeah, the defense totally collapsed this year when he left due to injury. Would love to see him back, and would also love to see Campbell back. And then Ryan Barker, yeah, you might not view a kicker as a necessary piece to bring back. I do. Ryan Barker, 18 of 19 on the year. His one miss was a 50-yarder that was blocked. Just so consistent, even in the Pinstripe Bowl, when, again, the football is a rock. He's kicking a rock. I think he had a 48-yarder. It would have been good for like 55. Right down the middle, he just nails. And I think he's so underrated as a kicker. He's a vital part to this team that you need to bring back. He is absolutely the MVP of this year when it comes to special teams. MVP of the offense, I think, yeah, you have to put Katron Allen as the clear choice there. What a year from him. What a career. And I give him and Nick credit for how they handled this season. Maybe Grunkemeyer as a second choice for MVP because of the way he was able to really flourish in the back half of this season. But defensively, I think you got to give MVP to Zachy Wheatley. Zachy Wheatley, Mr. Reliable, seemed to always be in the right spot, surefire tackler. I remember I was a senior in college, and I was working for Penn State Athletics, and they said it was spring practice, and a lot of the early enrollees were getting their real first significant practice time. And we were in Beaver Stadium. Athletics comes to me. They say, hey, we want to get these young guys some media training. Come in. We're not even going to air these interviews, but come in with a microphone. We'll have a cameraman for you. Just ask them a couple questions and get these guys used to being in front of the camera. And we can look at the tape later, and we'll have our media people coach them up a little bit. And Zachy Wheatley was one of those guys. And I had no idea how his career at Penn State was going to transpire. But now we stand here 4 years later. I can't believe how good of a safety he was, and I was so excited to see him come back this year. I hate the way that it worked out this year because he was definitely somebody I wanted to end out on top. Just such a stud in that defensive backfield. And I think if you had to put a second MVP in there, guy who kind of flew under the radar, Amari Campbell. Loses his counterpart in Tony Rojas early in the year and was able to still put together a hell of a season. Those were our two leading tacklers. It was Amari Campbell, finished with over 100 tackles, and I think Zachy was somewhere in the mid-70s. So the two of them can't say enough about how well they played this season, and I just wish that the defense overall as a unit played much better than it did. Again, the Jim Knowles defense just was so all over the place. And you had good games, then you had really, really bad games. You had good drives in games, and then really, really bad drives. It was just all over the place. But we move on to 2026. Briefly, just about the coaching search before I really get into Matt Campbell and everything I'm excited about. I apologize if I'm totally blabbering, by the way. I have no idea how long I've been going. I love talking about Penn State football, and I haven't done one of these videos in 2 months, so this might be a really long video. On the coaching search, people in the media and people nationally have pointed out how much of a disaster the coaching search was. And, oh, man, Penn State, they were reaching out to all these different coaches, and all these coaches said no. I was definitely frustrated with the fact that days were going by. We still didn't have a head coach. And, yeah, this coach who was maybe tangentially attached to the Penn State vacancy gets a contract extension to stay at their own current school. That was rubbing me the wrong way. But to say that Penn State, they were, locked in on like 15 different guys and they all said no, or 20 different guys. Yeah, we probably reached out to people and interviewed people. That doesn't mean that we were making like heavy pursuits for all these guys. I think early on, Pat Kraft was going big name hunting, and I don't blame him. But one of the fundamental things that we learned from this coaching search and overall in college football from this coaching cycle is that in this day and age of college football, if you are in a Power 4 conference at a school that has the financial backing, you don't necessarily have to move. You don't have to get to that next rung on the ladder, per se. If you're a group of 5 coach and you're not in the big leagues, yeah, you got to get to the big leagues. But once you're there, like Vanderbilt can win now. Indiana obviously can win now. These are schools that have never been powerhouses. You do not need to go to a traditional power anymore if you want to win in this NIL and transfer portal era. If you have the resources and you're at a school that's even slightly marketable, yeah, you're going to be just fine. So if you're a really good coach, you don't have to go to a Penn State anymore to win now. And I think that was what we kind of came to learn. You look at all the other major head coaching vacancies, like, yeah, Lane Kiffin took the LSU job. But Florida, they got Summerall from the G5. Silverfield, Golesh, Eric Morris, G5. Kenny Chesney. Bob Chesney. My apologies. Bob Chesney to UCLA. Group of 5 guy. Primarily, all of these head coaching vacancies were filled by people coming from the group of 5. It's because once you are in the big leagues, there's not much mobility anymore. You don't have to go to a top job. So, yeah, we missed out on a couple of guys. But I think if Kalani Sitake, if that news never comes out, if it's never revealed that we were going all in on him and BYU was making this last-ditch effort to keep him and ultimately they succeed in that, if that never comes out, I don't think there's this like crazy ha 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 from the media. Look at Penn State. What a laughing stock. They're missing out on all these head coaches. I don't think that's the case. Yeah, we would still have a terrible signing day, which was kind of expected. Yeah, I was hoping that we would have more than 2 people signed, but like Franklin was always going to take recruits. That was always the big thing with him, is that he was the program, and it wasn't necessarily pitching Penn State or pitching the history and the university and the brand of Penn State football. It was pitching James Franklin. So naturally, there were going to be people, once James Franklin leaves, who were going to follow him. I didn't think it was that big of a deal on signing day, but yeah, after the Kalani Sitake news comes out, we miss out on him. We still don't have a coach. After, signing day, where we only have 2 people signed, then the audio comes out that's leaked to Pat Kraft, like everything piling up. Yeah, it made it seem like this head coaching search was a disaster, but you wind up at the end of it. I said at the time, when I first heard Matt Campbell floated out, I was like, oh, this is kind of underwhelming, because I know that we were looking at some really big-name targets that just, didn't work out for whatever reason. Most of the time, those guys just decided to stay at their current schools. As I just pointed out, when you talk about the landscape of college football, that's what's going to happen from here on out. If you're remotely capable of winning, and if you have the resources and the backing, you're going to stay at your own school. I thought it was underwhelming with Matt Campbell, mainly because you never really got the sense that, he was this like heavily sought after coach. But as Josh Pate has illustrated, as a lot of guys have illustrated who know Matt Campbell, you didn't know that he was a sought after coach because he was never publicizing it. And his agent was never leaking it, which Franklin, for so many years, one of the biggest criticisms of him was that every single time the USC job opened up or the Florida job opened up, Franklin's name was always linked to the search. It was always James Franklin, because Jimmy Sexton, his agent, was always trying to get his name out there so that James Franklin could go back to Penn State and barter for more money and get a contract extension. That's obviously how the game works, but that rubbed a lot of Penn State people the wrong way. Hey, if you say you're committed to Penn State, why are we seeing your name always in these coaching searches? That was never the case with Matt Campbell. Guy got NFL job offers. Guy got really prominent head coaching jobs in the college space. Never took them. Wanted to stay at Iowa State. Didn't feel the need to publicize that and boost his market value, because he was going to stay at Iowa State as long as he could. He didn't want to move his family around. Wanted to really build something special at Iowa State, and sure enough, they had the best stretch that they've ever had in program history. Last year, they had 11 wins. It had never happened before at Iowa State. They hadn't even reached 10 wins before. They had never had a double-digit win season until Matt Campbell came around. So I love the fact that he comes over and he's been very transparent. Like, hey, I'm not necessarily a Penn State guy, but, oh my God, the reverence that I have for this program's history, it's through the roof. And he's talking about Todd Blackledge and Kyle Brady and Joe Paterno and all these guys that he would grow up hearing about and watching. It's been a hell of a start for him in terms of winning over the fan base. And I was really worried, because I did think that there was going to be a divide. People who really wanted Terry Smith and were pissed that he didn't get the job. And no matter who came in, afterwards. It could have been, the best coach to ever coach. Hell, it could have been Nick Saban, whatever the case is. Whoever it was, they were going to be furious that it wasn't Terry Smith, and you were going to see this bickering back and forth. But so far, I haven't seen a word. And a large part of that is because Terry Smith is still going to be on the staff, and how gracious of Terry. I mean, a guy he bleeds blue and white. He could have gotten a good job elsewhere, could have followed Franklin, but could have gotten a premier job, could have gotten a head coaching job elsewhere. And he decides that he's going to stay and take a step down from interim head coach. He's going to go back to, I don't know what his position will be exactly, but he's definitely taking a step down. He'll be compensated, but to hand it over and be the perfect leader that we need and be a great voice for Matt Campbell, to really give him the rundown on Penn State, on the locker room, on what guys we should be retaining, all that. You can't say enough about Terry Smith. So I love the fact that the two of them have a pre-existing relationship. They've been working together. They're putting together this staff, and we just got some big news yesterday that I am ecstatic about. D'Anton Lynn is going to be the next defensive coordinator at Penn State. This was a guy, and I don't want to keep, taking these indirect shots at Franklin, because I'm not trying to. But this was a guy who Penn State targeted last year for the open DC job, and for whatever reason, it didn't work out. But the rumor is that he was never really a James Franklin guy. There are a lot of alumni, a lot of lettermen, a lot of former players who never liked Franklin. A lot of the current players who played for Franklin, have the best things to say about him. Their families have the best things to say about him, and I don't take that lightly, and I always appreciated that about James Franklin. But a lot of these old school guys never liked him. Never liked him. Michael Robinson, going back to the Nebraska game, we're at halftime, and he's asked on the broadcast, this is national television, who he thinks the next head coach should be, and he advocated for Terry Smith. But one of the most damning things he said there was, I'm getting tired of these coaches coming to Penn State and just using us for money. That was shocking. He has said some things about Franklin. He recently said, I saw him say in like a Facebook reel or an Instagram reel, that Franklin was never a ball coach. He did not make good football decisions. They did not like Franklin. And so for D'Anton Lynn, I don't know for sure if that factored into his decision to stay at USC last year, and now he's willing to come to Penn State. I don't know. But I do know that this is a coach that has been rising in the ranks, had a great year at UCLA, completely transformed that defense to the point where he gets poached, and Lincoln Riley brings him on his staff at USC. And people keep pointing out, dude, look at USC's defensive stats this year. They're not great. I think they were in the 40s in total defense. But you have to look at what they were before he got there. Lincoln Riley has never had good defenses, ever, going back to when he was at Oklahoma. So the fact that D'Anton Lynn, year by year, has been able to create such improvement, and you see it in terms of the amount of points that they were allowing before he got there versus now, the amount of yards before he got there versus now, there is a drastic improvement. And he's also a guy, we spoke about how Jim Knowles, I guess, really was a coach who you need a lot of time to install his system. There has been immediate change with D'Anton Lynn's defenses in year one. So it should be much more simple, much more easier for these guys to digest. And it's great how this news comes right before the transfer portal window, because I think this is going to be a major, major key in a lot of people staying. But we shall see. Guy who knows what LBU was. Played, 28 to 2011? Maybe 2012? No, 2011. Played in the tail end of the Paterno years. Was absolutely aware of what it meant with Posluszny and Sean Lee and Dan Connor. God, could you imagine? I mean, people are speculating that Dan Connor is going to be retained on staff. But if you have Terry Smith, Dan Connor, and D'Anton Lynn all on the defensive side of the ball, we're going to get back to playing some real hard-nosed Penn State football defensively. And I love that. Love that. He knows Navarro Bowman. He knows all these guys. He knows what the defense at Penn State used to stand for. And it just got so watered down under Franklin, and this year in particular. Yeah, was nowhere near the defense that we're expecting and that we're used to and accustomed to at Penn State. So I can't wait to see what he does. Also, the main thing that a lot of people have thrown out in the past, 24 hours since the news was announced, it's being reported, rumored, that Eric Henderson is also going to come along with him. He's the D-line coach at USC, had quite the career in the NFL as well. I think he got his career started with D'Anton Lynn in Los Angeles with the Chargers, back when Anthony Lynn, D'Anton's father, was the head coach. And I think Henderson was with the Chargers for 1 or 2 years, then went to the Rams and was coaching Aaron Donald, won a Super Bowl with the Rams, and people rave about this guy. So if that's the case, if you get D'Anton Lynn, a former player from the old school days who's coming back home, a rising star in terms of, defensive coordinators across the sport, and he's bringing Eric Henderson with him, yeah, that would rock. That would really, really rock. So I'm very excited to see how that all transpires. It's a hell of a hire, the real first big hire by Matt Campbell, and it's definitely one that's going to get this fan base jazzed up. So very excited about that. Offensively, Mauser is offensive coordinator. I saw some people who were a little bit weary about that. We had this massive payroll when it came to coaching staff, and instead of going out and getting this big name offensive coordinator, we just stick with the guy that Campbell has been with for the past 2 years now as OC. People were worried about that. I think it's totally fine, especially given the fact that they're also bringing over Noah Pauley. This is the real, get ready. This wide receiver coach who's coached, Christian Watson and Jalen Knoll and Jaden Higgins, who are, he developed them into these great NFL receivers. Yeah, I want that, because that has been one of the biggest things that we've been struggling with as an offense for the past 2 or 3 years, ever since Parker Washington. And even Parker Washington in college, we didn't really get the most out of him. We can't develop a receiver room. We don't have these guys on the outside to throw to. Even this year, when we do have guys who I think are very talented in Pena and Ross and Hudson, we can't get them incorporated the way that we need them to. Now you bring over the combination of Campbell and Mauser and Pauley, those three, head coach, OC, wide receiver coach. And there have been reports saying it's a let your nuts hang type of offense. I love that. We have not seen that at Penn State since Joe Moorhead, 2016, 2017, where we're going to rely on our quarterback to be a bit ballsy and put the ball in a 50-50, 60-40 situation, and we're going to trust our receivers to go make a play. I love that. Love that. And, I don't know if that is enticing to some of the players that they currently had at Iowa State, who now might be transferring over to us. I don't know what it's going to look like. I don't know how many Iowa State guys we're going to be bringing in, but I wouldn't be shocked if Matt Campbell recognizes, okay, this year might be a bit of a wash. We still want to put out a winning football team, a winning product, but there's a lot of turnover in this roster. We're still trying to lay the foundation here. At the very least, let's just show what we're capable of. And if we do bring over some of these Iowa State guys that we have kind of homegrown, let's show the country what exactly we could do now at Penn State with our players, now with Penn State's resources meshed together in the Big Ten on a big stage. Let's really do something special here and give a great pitch to the country. I wouldn't be shocked. So those three and their aggressiveness, I can't wait to see how that formulates into an offense. I think we're going to see a really ballsy offense, a really just hard-hitting, tough-nosed defense, and I'm very excited to see how it all comes to form in 2026. Also, special teams. So far, Justin Lustig has not been poached, and we thought there was a really good chance he was going to wind up with Franklin at Virginia Tech. Virginia Tech just filled their special teams coordinator job. So who knows? Maybe Justin Lustig, that would be big if we could keep him. People always forget about special teams. I will not. He is a great piece of this coaching staff currently. Would love to see him come back. So I'm feeling really confident. This coaching staff is great. The roster, I don't think is going to be anything that we wouldn't expect. I think the people who leave, we're probably going to get a good sense of who exactly is going to leave here in the next couple of days, and I don't think anything will be a shock. I don't think there are going to be any real departures that are going to catch us by surprise and that are really going to hurt us. I think we're going to pretty much understand who's leaving, who's not. On the coaching staff, I was not expecting Deion Barnes to leave. That is a loss that I don't know what happened there. I thought he would have stayed. But, yeah, stinks to see him go, especially to South Carolina. That was a weird fit. But I guess he got a better paying job. I don't know. I don't know what happened there. But so far, everything is pretty much in the norm. Everybody we thought was going to leave is leaving. Everybody who we think is going to stay, I think is going to stay. I'm feeling really confident about all this. And I'm also feeling confident about the quarterback one situation for next year. I'll touch on this briefly. It's been a hot topic issue the past couple days, especially after Grunkmeyer just had a great game and balled out in the Pinstripe Bowl. Who do you want at quarterback next year for Penn State? Do you want to get Grunky again? Or would you be fine bringing in Rocco Becht? It's a really interesting question. I've also seen some people throw out that Bo Prabula still technically is on the table. I don't think that's a realistic possibility compared to Grunkmeyer or Rocco Becht, but I guess technically it still is an option. But focusing specifically on Becht versus Grunk, Becht has the familiarity, obviously, with Campbell and with Mauser and with Paulie at receivers coach, and that would be a very easy transition. But Grunkmeyer also does have a pre-existing relationship with Campbell because he was recruited by Campbell, went to Iowa State for a visit. It's a really tough scenario. I think for the sake of 2026, Rocco Becht probably would be the better option, but he would just be a one-year rental, and then you'd probably be punting on Ethan Grunkmeyer unless he'd be willing to take a step back and be a backup once again. I don't know if he would want to do that. You'd be probably punting on 3 years that Ethan Grunkmeyer has, or at the very least 2 years that he has, which is tough. That's a tough pill to swallow because I do think he's shown a lot of good things this year, and his development from game 1 to game 7 was really something remarkable. And I don't know. But I don't think for the sake of 2026, you could go wrong. And that's the main thing that I want to address here, and I guess we can end out this video on this. 2026, let's face it, it's not going to be a national championship type of expectation season. The schedule, very manageable. Don't get me wrong. There aren't a whole lot of games on that schedule that you fear. I think we could still get 9 or 10 wins, but there is going to be an adjustment period. There is going to be a learning curve, and it's integrating all this new stuff. It's going to be still a roster that's very reliant on transfer portal and getting a bunch of new guys into the mix and getting them to cohesively work together. But what I've seen so far from Matt Campbell and the praise that he has gotten and the praise that Penn State has gotten since we hired him, it gives you so much confidence. So much confidence. Even if it is an 8-4 football season next year, that's fine. We're not having these expectations for 2026. We wouldn't have had them even if Franklin was still here. There was always going to be this massive turnover in the roster after this season. We were always not going to be on a national championship run in 2026. I'm just looking forward to seeing a different brand of football from what we've seen and getting back to what we grew to love about Penn State football, 20 years ago, 30 years ago, 40, whatever the case is. What we've seen, particularly this year, in the first 6 games, we've strayed so far away from what made Penn State so special, and it's great to have Matt Campbell at the helm, who's hopefully here to reignite that love and that overall passion that Penn State football plays with every single Saturday. We saw Terry Smith already kind of reignite that. Let's see if Matt Campbell can keep that going as he's handed the torch now. I almost said the pitchfork. As he's handed the pitchfork, as he's getting ready to rage into 2026. I don't know. I'm so excited. It's such a breath of new air. It's new life. And that's all I really have to say. I think that covers it. I've ran out of words. I'm stumbling to try and end this video out. But Terry Smith, can't say enough about him. Can't say enough about how excited I am about 2026. We'll see what happens in the next few days. Transfer portal is going to be heating up. It was one wacky 2025 season, but I think we're in for something really, really special. I love everything I've seen from Matt Campbell, and I can't wait to see how he continues to build out this staff, how he continues to build out this roster, and how we move forward. I think this fan base is jacked up. Super excited. I think blue-white is going to be awesome. I think the first game of the year against Marshall, I want to be there so bad. I'm already looking into plane tickets. I think it's going to be an incredible moment. We are in the Matt Campbell era, and there is so much to be happy about, so much to look forward to, and I will be here along for the ride. And I'll catch you guys next time. I probably won't be here again until August. I thank you guys for tuning in. Apologize for the hiatus, but if you've watched this all the way through, I appreciate you because I've rambled for so long, but that's going to do it. What a weird year. Let's move on to 2026. This has been Connor Griffin signing off, and until next time, we are